Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground." So Noah came out, together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, "Never again will I curse the ground because of man, even though every inclination of his heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." After all this time, we finally have yet another term to use for Noah, the most famous social distancer. He and his family spent an entire year away from all other human society, which went out of existence on the ark. Now, I know that there are other people that have lived solitary lives away from the rest of society, kind of in extremes. I mean, there's one extreme that would be some of the what are sometimes called the desert fathers, the church fathers, who spent years in isolation from other people. And going way to the other extreme would be people who are in prison and who are forced to be in solitary confinement. But Noah's time certainly is the most famous and most difficult away from all other people. You know, when you Google Noah's Ark, you get lots of really cheerful looking pictures. You know, the animals are all stacked up across the top and they look quite happy, kind of cartoonish. Looks a little bit like a Sesame Street scene. But that must have been a really horrendous year in Noah's life. I mean, the Bible tells us that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, not just a summer thunderstorm, of course, but the windows of heaven being open for the water to pour down and the great deep bursting up, and this water is whipping the boat around. And then it says that the water prevailed, or kind of proudly pushed its way around and pushed the ark around for another 5 months. You know, when you look at those models, not the ones that look all cheerful or the woodpeckers pecking holes in them, but the more attempts at more realistic pictures of the ark make it look long and narrow, kind of like an extended shoebox. And commentators will say that you couldn't sail in this boat very much, but it would be hard to sink. Well, you look at that description and you wonder if it would have been easy to roll in the waves tossing. But then, of course, after the rain was finished falling and after the 5 difficult months came, there was another 7 months plus where the water began to recede and things got calm, and the sky turned blue some days. I can imagine. Now, the Bible never actually probes Noah's emotions or comments, but can you imagine Noah looking out his window one day at what used to be his world? Still lots of water everywhere, and wreckage and dead bodies maybe floating by. Can you imagine him saying, "Well, Lord, I can see what you've rescued me from, but what have you rescued me for? I mean, my whole life seems not to be there anymore." So the reading today begins when God opens the door, the Lord opens the door and lets Noah off, and no legislative battle needed to happen here because he decided. And they come out and there isn't anything in the landscape that Noah could recognize. No familiar sights, because the water had rearranged everything. And again, he might have thought, what's happened to my world? But then the wonderful promise that God makes is his way of saying to Noah and to us, remember, this is my world, and I will take care of it. And he promises that never again is he going to unleash a deluge on the world as he had now. This dramatic intervention he had made, he was never going to do again. Now, we still have floods and tsunamis and hurricanes, and they do affect some parts of the population at some times, and a virus can affect large parts of our population at times. But as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will continue. And there's the answer to Noah's hypothetical question, what did you save me for? Well, certainly the Lord saved Noah and his family to keep the human race alive. But more than that, and from our point of view, the Lord also did this to keep his promise alive. Because Noah and his sons, particularly Noah and his son Shem, and then their descendants were carrying the promise of your Savior and mine were on that ark. And God was keeping that promise alive. They were the container which was holding that promise during their lifetime. You know, a couple of weeks ago, it's kind of hard to know what the days are now, I watched a part of a documentary about organ transplants. This happened to be a heart transplant. And the amount of medical skill and the complex coordination of these efforts is remarkable to watch. In the case I watched, this happened in Canada, and after all of the preparation, medical, logistics, finally it came down to a chase. And when they found a suitable heart, the team had to travel by jet all the way across Canada to the west coast near Vancouver and pick up this beating organ and bring it back. No time could be wasted. Everything had to be done. And you watch that and you think, here, this ordinary looking package that people are taking off the plane contains life, and the life that is going to continue. Noah and his family on that ark were preserving the promise of Jesus Christ to come into our world. It's still God's world, and he continues to protect it and to maintain it in spite of the problems that we may face. And Noah understood that much. We can tell by his actions. The text says that when Noah got off the ark, it says, he took some of the clean animals and clean birds and sacrificed them as burnt offerings. Now, we're liable to read almost any parts of the Old Testament that talk about animal sacrifices and kind of want to cover our eyes and say, oh, I just don't understand all that. But it's good to pay attention to the language because there were different kinds of offerings. And the burnt offering was the one offering which in particular expressed total devotion to God. You didn't keep any of the meat back for yourself. You didn't have any kind of ceremonial meal with somebody else. You were saying with this offering, I give you everything, God. I trust you completely, and I am completely devoted to you. Noah expressed that, not knowing what his life was going to be like, what would be forever changed, where he was going, because he could live in God's promises and he could be devoted to him. You can probably make your own applications here. We're wondering in education, in business, in government, what kind of world are we going to be living in? The answer is it's still our Father's world. He still made us for himself. And our response is to thank and to praise and to serve and obey him. God bless you all.